Okay, let's take a look at Docendo, number 11. Last time I gave you the word history mystery. What does a point of view that believes people should not be trusted have in common with a point of view that believes there are more bad things in life than good? So we're kind of looking at two ways of looking at the world, both of them kind of negative. Any word you come to mind when you think of these two ideas? Well, now let's switch gears and look at the sentence as editors. Her cynicism has influenced me more than I thought. I am now skeptical of almost everything. So, her cynicism has influenced me more than I thought. Sounds like a complete thought there, doesn't it? I am now skeptical of almost everything. Looks like we have two sentences here. Now, whenever we have two sentences, complete independent clauses that are separated with a comma, that should be a red flag. That's called a comma splice. It's a type of run-on. And what we need to do is make that two sentences, either with a period or a semicolon. So for now, let's just put a period in there and make sure we have two sentences. Looks pretty good, except I think there's a problem here. Now, this is one of these common problems. You should understand the difference between then and then. So then we're talking about time, aren't we? I did this, then I did that. In this case, that's not what we're talking about. Has influenced me more than I thought. We're talking about a comparison. So that would be the A, than. So it's a pretty simple fix. When you're proofreading your writing, it's common error. Just realize if you're talking about time, it's E. If you're talking about comparisons, it's A. There's one other problem here. Now, I have this rule. I call it the $100 rule. I look at the sentence and I say to myself, is there any word there that I wouldn't bet $100 is spelled correctly? Now, that's a thought experiment. I'm not actually betting money here. But in my mind, what that does is that raises the stakes, no pun intended. And the idea is, okay, I can bet $100 that than is spelled correctly now that I've changed it. I know her, of, almost everything. Those, I'm sure, are spelled. But if there's any word in there I have a doubt on, I wouldn't put down that $100. I should check it and look it up. And the word for me is skeptical. It looks like it could be spelled that way, but of course, English spelling is difficult, isn't it? It's not always phonetic. It's not always, there aren't clear rules. In fact, as soon as you start studying rules of spelling in English, you find many, many exceptions. So if you look up skeptical, you will find that it is, in fact, incorrectly spelled. It should be CK, or SK rather, SK. So now let's take a look at the definitions here. So cynicism, an attitude of suspicion where you believe the future is bleak and that people are actually only acting out of self-interest. So cynicism is a very, very negative way of seeing the world. I hope you're not cynical. I hope that when you run into events, even negative events in your life, that they don't turn you into a cynic. So cynicism is the noun form. A cynic would be the label that you'd give to a person. That actually comes from a philosophical tradition of the Cynics. And if you want to know a little bit of the history of the word, that's the etymology. It basically relates to these ancient philosophers who kind of lived like dogs. They just threw out all conventions, all rules. They just lived their life without any rules, basically, because they basically saw society as corrupt. So again, a very negative attitude and a very negative way of seeing the world, but one that you should be aware of. The second word, pessimism, again, is close to cynicism, but it's basically just to see that idea of kind of seeing the glass half empty, right? A tendency to see the worst, most negative aspect of things, or believe that the worst will happen. So it's obviously the opposite of optimism is pessimism. The glass is half empty instead of the glass is half full. Now let's look at the sentence. Her cynicism has influenced me more than I thought. I am now skeptical of almost everything. So notice in that case, I used a semicolon. It's okay. The two sentences are closely related. So semicolon or a period would work. And then we got those two spellings. So than there would be one of those words that we would call homophone, because then and than are pretty close in pronunciation, but different meaning. And then, of course, skeptical Just needs to be spelled correctly. Just a little bit more clarification between pessimism and cynicism. Pessimism is the belief that there are more bad things in life than there are good. Cynicism is the belief that people should not be trusted. So cynics basically look at other people and they assume that other people are going to do bad things. And it's, again, not a very positive way of seeing the world, but nevertheless, it is a belief that some people have, a perception of being cynical as opposed to optimistic. Okay, word history mystery for next time. What does an adjective, meaning, let me make this up a little bit. What does an adjective meaning self-governing have in common with an adjective meaning government by a ruler with unlimited power? So now we're talking about words related to government. So think about those two ideas and see if you can come up with a word, or at least one of them, for next time. And I'll see you then.